welcome back to FPL IQ. I'm FPL Hall Rob, and I'm joined again by Teacher FPL. Today is a big one. Popular side, Liverpool FC. Are they going to be challenging for the title again? We're going to be looking at formations, predicted lineups, play style, strengths, weaknesses, players to potentially pick and avoid. Before we get into the starting predicted lineup, there's lots of question marks and things going on at Liverpool. Big movers and shakers happening. How are you feeling about this Liverpool side, Lucian?
Guess what? Navigator got injured again in a friendly.
Yeah.
But he doesn't play for Liverpool anymore.
No.
Yes, I know, right? The more things change, the more things stay the same. Cannot wait to get into Liverpool because, well, big question, right? Do things stay the same? Let's go.
Starting with the formation. Now, we know Trent's supposed new position, and the formation is sort of similar to Man City's, which is like the 3-2-2-3. But just for the sake of this lineup, I've also put it as a 4-2-3-1. So it's the players we're looking at more than the sort of setup, and at times it's a 4-2-3-1, and then maybe in an attacking phase it goes into that 3-2-2-3. Right? It's a fluid formation. Starting in goal, Alisson. No questions about it. He's the number one. Going into the back line, you've got Trent, Konate, Van Dijk, and Robertson, with Matip coming in and out of the side at times as well. But I think that's more of your back four. Now, going into midfield and attack, here's where things get a little bit difficult. So we've got two new signings here. We've got McAllister from Brighton, and we've got Soberslai from Red Bull. And I think they'll go straight to the starting lineup. That's because we're in the middle of those two, as the more defensive-minded midfielder, we have Fabinho, who could be with Henderson off to Saudi Arabia as well, like so many players this transfer window. So he has a question mark because it could be leaving. Also in midfield, you've got Thiago, who's got interest from Barcelona, so Liverpool have set a price for him. And you've got Henderson, who I've already said could be on his way as well. So an issue that I might have, and Thuram, Lilian Thuram's son, there's two of them. There's Marcus, and I can't really pronounce his name, but he's at Lille. He's the central defensive midfielder. He's supposed to be going to Liverpool. If that happens, he'll basically go where Fabinho is. But we can only predict what they definitely have right now, and this is the players that they've got. But if Fabinho does go, they're going to need a defensive-minded midfielder. They can't just, stick attacking players all from after the back four. Wouldn't make sense. Then in attack, I've gone for Salah, Gakpo, and Diogo Jota. But of course, you know that they've got Luis Diaz, and they also have Darwin Núñez. I just think Gakpo is slightly ahead of Núñez. Núñez is still, to be polite, a little bit raw with some of his chances that he gets. He gets quite a lot of chances. He does score a few goals, but he tends to miss some. I think Gakpo's the first choice there, and I think Jota is just ahead of Diaz. But I think Salah is the dead cert in this situation. He is probably the nailed-on player, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Gakpo and Núñez swapping in and out. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jota and Diaz swapping in and out as the main one. Or sometimes Salah, if the game's already won, after 60 minutes, going off for maybe Diaz or Jota or whoever's not there. So this is the starting 11 predicted with the players that they definitely have right now. What do you want to say about this Liverpool side?
Well, Rob, thank you for definitely edifying the audience here. Because with elite teams, with teams that challenge for the title, we have to acknowledge that their setup phase and their attacking phase is going to be completely different. This is the age of transition where people start the debate of position versus formation. Because if you play with a formation, the dynamics between each position is static and it's set in stone and it's easy to train. And therefore, it will be more refined and easier to work out. The variations will be harder to counter, so to speak. Whereas if you go with positional fluidity, which is what Liverpool are attempting here and what Man City have done for so well, then we are looking at roles rather than numbers. Because when you go with a 3-2-2-3 formation, right, you can call it a 3-box-3, a 3-diamond-3. It all comes down to transition, because a lot of teams right now are somehow moving their fullbacks into midfield. Now, the purpose of moving fullbacks into midfield is twofold. You crowd the space, you dominate it, right? So that your three quote-unquote defensive midfielders are outnumbering one attacking midfielder of your opponents. Secondly, these defenders are usually midfielders that are converted into fullbacks anyway, so they're comfortable in midfield and they can progress further forward with the ball. 5 years ago, people like Fabian Delph was already making this kind of transition. Now we have Rico Lewis, right? So who knows who will do it for Liverpool? I would be actually really disappointed if Trent does it for Liverpool here, because his talents will be so underutilized from fullback into deep midfield that I would rather see somebody like Pascal Gropp type, like maybe even McAllister himself could be the one that transitions all across midfield. Like he would probably start the ball by moving to fullback and then moving back into midfield himself. When we talk about positional flexibility, what matters, especially since we have analyzed Man City so thoroughly last season, that we have to look at what they look like in the final third. Now, Man City has two variations, the 2-3-5 and the 2-2-6. For Liverpool, that is the real question, because Klopp's, double-edged sword, so to speak, is that he tends to utilize only one side of the pitch to attack. He does not use both. Whereas City attacks from both wings, and he would basically use the half space to use one wing to create for the other. Now, Liverpool cannot do that because Trent is so fixed, Salah is so fixed, that if they operate on the right side, that right central midfielder has to do the donkey work. Last season, they could, put that on the shoulders of Jordan Henderson or Curtis Jones, or was it Elliot? No, Bajcetic. So, you got all sorts of highs and all sorts of lows. Now, you put that duty on McAllister's shoulders. Will he be expected to go up the left or the right? Nobody knows. This is where we really have to study Liverpool in pre-season. Which half space will they dominate, first of all? And secondly, which of their wingers will set up the other? Because that is the true death knife, that death touch of the 3-2-2-3. When half space creates for the flanks, one flank must cross for the other. So that, in principle, is what we look out for.
And that was the key point I said, the reason about Fabinho having to be replaced, because they need... It's like we're in the age of roles. Like we've had attacking phases in 3 phases for years now, but now it's gone that step further, and it feels like we're going from formations to roles now, and not just roles, but also defensive phase roles, attacking phase roles, rather than formations. So having that role, exactly what you've said about doing the donkey work on one side. See it as like a Kante type player, right? The one who's going to run around and get the ball back and do the leg work. Is McAllister going to be the one to do that? Who's the defensive role in this Liverpool team now? Like, this is why pre-season for Liverpool is going to be huge. If Thuram comes over from France, then I think he could be a great signing. He's light on the ball. He's pretty agile for a big lad, and he's incredibly strong. He looks like a really good player. And I've looked into him quite a bit because I came across him on FIFA on the football game, because he got an early card that dominated. So I looked more into him, and he looks like the perfect player to do that kind of work for Liverpool. But we can't talk about them yet because they're not there. So there's no point living in speculation city, because it's a moot point, right? Let's first start with the strengths of this side. They're a top team. They should be challenging Manchester City for the Premier League title. They should be going deep into the European competitions. Granted, they're in the Europa League this year, but if they care and they don't just play the reserves, they should be going pretty deep, if not all the way. They just had an off season. They finished 5th, which is below par for them. It's similar to a bad season for Chelsea and a bad season for Spurs. All 3 of which I think will be back to being a better, or around where they should be. In terms of the strength of this side, you know what you're going to get. Like, if you're going to go for Salah, he's probably a nailed on person for you there. If you're going to go for Trent and Robertson, or if you want to, for some reason, I don't know why you would, but you want to go for Alisson in goal, you're going to be locked on. We'll talk about the weaknesses later, but the fact that rotation, in the past, Liverpool have always been a better side than Manchester City because they didn't rotate. The days of Salah on one wing, Mane on the other, Firmino down the middle, Trent and Robbo as your attacking wing backs, they're it's gone. And now Liverpool from this season might not be that sort of team we look at as a top Premier League side and a top FPL side. And also just touching on what you said about Trent potentially being wasted as that central defensive, that sort of midfield role. Yeah, we talked about in the first draft video. I did it on the Twitter, and it's why he's not in my draft. I feel as though you're taking away that beautiful pass and crossing ability that he has down the wing and being more the wing backs. When they play a 4-2-3-1 originally, the heat maps are red all up and down the sides for Robertson and Trent. It's why they used to be the top ones. If you put him into this new role in central midfield, FPL wise, maybe in terms of actual football, he'll be fantastic. But FPL wise, I think that's going to be overrated. But strengths, they're a top side. Salah is probably the best FPL asset of all time. He's probably going to have another fantastic season this season, despite being 12.5 million. Soboslai, I can't go too much about it because he's a new player to the Premier League. But McAllister, I've already said that I believe Liverpool have signed him for his more defensive role that he used to play at Brighton, not as the attacking midfielder. So in terms of his FPL potential, I think that's going to be lower. But I think Robertson's still going to be a good option. But Salah's going to be the main one here. But strengths, they're just a top side. Any strengths that you want to put about Liverpool?
You're not going to like me for this, but I do believe McAllister was signed to take penalties.
Ooh, no.
Look at Salah's penalty record. It's not good.
Doesn't matter.
It's not good.
Doesn't matter. Salah won't give that up. You think he'll be on penalties?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. Just look at the statistics. Just look at the statistics. Look at the statistics. When they had James Milner taking penalties, it was beautifully clean. But when Salah took them, he would only score about 75% of his penalties. And he had a massive dip last season, which is one of the reasons Liverpool couldn't win a lot of crucial games. I think the biggest one that stood out was the 0-0 or draw against Leicester, or was it the 1-0 loss against Leicester or something like that, where he missed a penalty at 0-0. That was hair tearing, because that's FPL, right?
They've got a success rate of 83%, so it's not the worst.
But it's not 100%. McAllister is 100%.
Wow, could be a big call if he's on penalties. Yeah. But I mean, you wouldn't bring him in because he's on penalties if he's playing as a defensive midfielder.
If he's playing as a defensive midfielder, which is why I believe that one of the strengths of Liverpool is that they can potentially put out 3 different sides and have 3 different strategies. So they are finally not dependent on the right flank only to beat teams. When Sadio Mane was still in the side, they had chances coming from multiple areas on the counter, and it was beautiful. One wing will cross for the other, and you'd have both fullbacks bombing forward really in sync with counterattacks. But last season, a huge part of Liverpool's game relies on them dominating the ball, which they did not. And this comes down to Van Dijk having a consistent partner at the back. I still feel that Liverpool need to sign another centre-back just to make sure that he's injury-free, because Joel Matip, Joe Gomez, and I don't even know who their third choice
Konate.
Centre-back pairing.
Konate.
Yeah, Konate. They're also injury-prone. And I just can't let it go that if Van Dijk does not have a settled centre-back partnership, then there's no point. Absolutely no point, because Van Dijk is aggressive. He likes to push out to the flanks to defend long and direct aerial threats, and his covering partner has to be fit. And if he's not, then Van Dijk's doing the covering work, and that's where Trent gets exposed. We are looking at a situation where Klopp has the ingredients where he can, circumvent the problem of modern players playing in a traditional formation, right? So the question is, will he use a modern formation? We all strongly believe so. We have to give him benefit of the doubt here. And that is their biggest strength, that they are finally capable of pulling off the traditional 4-3-3, the inventive 3-2-2-3. They can go 4-4-1, they can go 4-4-2, they can pick up a diamond by playing Gakpo as the number 10. They can use Gakpo as a false 9. I mean, they've got so many combinations. They can even play Salah and Jota as 2 traditional number 9s, and they won't look out of place. The flexibility is there.
Just want to jump in with what you what we said and why I said about Konate. Like, dead right. Like, 17 starts for Kanate, 15 for Gomez, with some of them at right back, and 12 for Matip. There's no solid partnership like the seasons before when it was Van Dijk and Matip, right? They don't have that consistent injury-free pairing at the back, which has obviously impacted if you look at their clean sheets and defensive records this season. Any other strengths that you want to point out for this Liverpool side?
FPL wise, a lot of their midfielders have been classified as a lot of their strikers have been classified as midfielders. So forget Gakpo. Diogo Jota and Luis Diaz is where the money's at. I made a draft with Diaz, Jota, Saka, and Martinelli all on the same side. Oh yes, and Foden as my fifth. Oh, I swear, I cannot stop looking at it. It's so good.
And you're right. If they can get a solid centre back partner for Van Dijk, you are looking at 5 million, which is, if they sort out defensively, it would be a good one. But yeah, Jota's 8 million, Diaz is 7.5 million. And if you do think McAllister's going to be more attacking, if it's going to be a game when he's further forward, he's 6 million. We've talked about how competitive the midfield positions are, but we're talking about a side that should be challenging for the title and paying 8 million or less, cheaper than Arsenal players and everyone else. It's certainly worth a look. It's just going to be a lot on pre-season, like you said earlier, about looking at who does what during which phase, right? What role is Trent going to have on an attacking phase, defensive phase? What we're going to see when they're against a bigger team or a big team in a friendly, or a weaker team in a friendly. It's going to be interesting to look at this Liverpool side and to see what new roles or what roles these players are going to do, because we've got 2 players in this starting 11 who are brand new to the club. We need to identify quickly who and what they are going to be doing during each phase for that side, because that's going to be key. If you find that Liverpool on the defence and McAllister is a defensive midfielder, but in an attacking phase he plays, left wing, he's going to be incredible for 6 million, right? So it is going to be looking at that. But we'll look at the weaknesses now for Liverpool. Goals and defensive worries, I think, is a key one. We've gone from a club that were defensively pretty sound. Van Dijk was up there with some of the best Premier League defenders of all time. And now it's like, it feels like every other week there's some clip or small video footage of him making some lazy effort to do something or getting turned inside out. The thing that used to pride about Van Dijk was like no one ever took him on. Like he spent like a long time never ever being taken on by anyone, and that has just completely gone out the window. Trent and Robertson went from clear defensive darlings to clear avoids at times last season, especially the first half of last season. From game week 1 to game week 19, they were the 5th worst team in the entire Premier League for clean sheets. 5th worst in the entire, for half a season. We're talking about here. We're talking about the team that is finished like in the top 2 for years, in the bottom 5 for clean sheets for half a season. It's absolutely there's not like a bigger regression from a side than that, to go from so high to so low. The second half of the season, they switched. Now, I've talked about those last 10 games that Liverpool had being one of the easiest runs. They play in the last 10 fixtures, they played the bottom 5 teams. And that actually saw them joint first for clean sheets. But they still allowed a lot of big chances. So they went from being one of the worst to the joint best for the second half of the season, which should... So when we look at an entire season for stats, what I would like to do is I would like to look at those sort of last 10 to 15 games when I'm making a decision about the next season. So for example, just as a side note, Almiron, right? He had such a strong start first half of the season compared to the second half of the season. But if you look at his full season, he looks incredible. I think this is a story about Liverpool. It was literally a game of 2 halves for them, where the first half of the season, awful. Second half of the season, much better. Trent looks to have moved up to midfield, which we talked about before. People think that might increase his assist potential. I personally am against that. And another issue, which I touched on earlier, is rotation risk, especially in attack. So we said earlier, we've gone from the days of knowing every single week which 3 attackers are going to be. Now we don't know which of the, let's say there are 5 attacking players, right? So the front 3 and 2 of midfield, right? We don't know which shape, which role, which players, which teams, when they're going to do it, who is going to be filling what role at what time. We don't know yet because there's 2 new players inside that front 5, and we still have now, is Gakpo going to be a striker down the middle like Firmino was? So does that mean Darwin Núñez, if Darwin Núñez comes into the side, he's an out and out striker, so that changes the whole dynamic of that front 3. So if in the past, when it was Mane and Salah as your key threat with Firmino as the false 9, if Gakpo comes in there, you'd be happy with Salah and whoever the other winger is. But if Darwin Núñez comes into the side, that pushes the wingers, including Salah, out to the wing, which makes them less attractive. But Núñez is probably not going to get nailed on for every single game. So if you've got Salah, some weeks it might be great because if Gakpo plays, he's going to be tucked in as a more of a forward. But if Núñez gets the nod, that's going to probably change you to a 4-3-3, and that's going to push Salah out to the side. So not only do we have rotation risks now in the attacking 5 positions for Liverpool, but we have role rotations and formation rotations. So Salah is still going to be a fantastic pick. But many times last season, people were saying, "Oh, he's on the touchline. He's so far on the wing again. He's not getting in behind. He's sticking to the wing." That's usually when Núñez is playing. Rotation for players, rotation for formation, and rotation for roles is a big weakness from an FPL point of view. Any weaknesses that you want to talk about for this Liverpool side?
I need to reiterate that they are extremely injury prone. They were very lackluster for the first half of the season, really, because they had so many injuries. Like, okay, let's play Wheel of Fortune. Who partnered Van Dijk for every single game from game week 1 to game week 19? Okay, so I'm going to give you a head start, right? Game week 1, Van Dijk played with Matip at centre back, okay? That ended 2-2. Want to guess who partnered Van Dijk in game week 2?
Probably
Just take a guess.
Konate.
Nat Phillips. Okay, now take a guess. Who partnered Van Dijk against Man United game week 3?
Konate.
Joe Gomez.
Oh my god.
It never ends.
I'm just gonna say Konate. Well, okay. Tell me when Konate was with him.
I cannot find him. So, I mean, that's the situation. And furthermore, they just had a severe loss of form to their tempo controller, Thiago Alcantara. The biggest weakness has to be the question mark of Fabinho, because even Fabinho himself missed a couple of games last season. It essentially allowed Liverpool to trust the youngsters. For me, I do believe that the youngsters deserve a start. I actually don't believe that both McAllister and Szoboszlai will start the opening games. One of them will start. Maybe it's like a 60-minute, 30-minute rotation because they operate in very similar zones and they have very similar behaviors. And really, I do believe that the young trio of Jones, Elliott, and Bajcetic should have the other central midfield spot, if not Henderson, because that right side synergy of Salah, Henderson / Elliott / Jones and Trent really pays off in spades. I'm more curious to see if Klopp wants to drop that entire flank completely and attack through the center, or will they keep that sentimental front 3? Because really, when Liverpool attack and you have Trent in midfield, Salah down the wing, Bajcetic forming into the box, you rotate that completely, put Trent on the wing, Salah in the center, and Bajcetic waiting outside the box. It looks equally good. You can't fault it. And I cannot foresee Szoboszlai and McAllister making that same rotation as of now. Yeah, so that's probably one of my mini weaknesses I see in Liverpool.
And this is what people don't seem to get with this new role. They just saw Trent doing really well for the last 10 games and Salah taking over, but that is such a key thing. In the past, traditionally, if Trent is at right back / right wing back going up and down the wing, that pushes Salah as an inside forward. And people don't understand that by Trent going into that central defensive midfield position, which I argue many times that I think that is bad for him in FPL, that means Salah will be more wide, which is bad for him. Definitely will be interesting to see what happens with this side. That's it for any other weaknesses that you want to pick out, just structural flaws and injury prone squad.
The last thing I want to point out is mentality. I think Liverpool need to decide whether they want to play front foot football, as they had with Mane, or they want to play a patient build-up game. That, I find, is probably going to be the biggest difference between Liverpool's 3-2-2-3 and City's 3-2-2-3, because City minimize transition phases. They want to be in a set phase as long as possible, cycle, work the ball into different areas of the pitch. Doesn't work, recycle, go back, switch positions, and have their playmakers all shift to one side. For Liverpool, they want to press certain areas in an efficient way, and that requires this very well executed concept of what we call rest defense. Rest defense is when you attack, but you need to have your attackers in the right position to defend in case you lose the ball. That was one of Liverpool's biggest weaknesses last season. A lot of their players made a lot of beautiful attacking runs, but they were just not in the same position to defend when crosses went in, came back out. And Liverpool were conceding a lot of big chances, especially to Brighton, right? That Trossard hat-trick really just came from them not guarding that space well. Brighton took advantage of it. Eric Ten Hag took advantage of it. Even Arsenal took advantage of it at times. So it comes down to whether Klopp wants to have a real structured side to dominate play, or whether he just wants to take a 3-0 lead in the first 20 minutes that was the season when he won the title. That is another big question mark I'd love to see.
Right, so we're looking at the top 3 picks, and I realise we kind of copped out here because I just put the same as you, and we just...
How can you differ? This is going to be so short. This part is going to be so short. Really.
Yeah, because we just put any attacker, fullbacks, Van Dijk's partner, and I just put the same because Salah is going to be fantastic, probably, and if we find out that Jota is slightly ahead, or Diaz is slightly ahead, or whoever he fancies, whoever that attacker that goes with Salah in the front 3 is going to be a great bargain if we see consistent starts and consistency with the side. Fullbacks, if Trent and Robbo are back to being sort of fullbacks at times, going up and down the wing, the best in the Premier League in terms of FPL. And Van Dijk's partner, you're looking at a 5 million player who should be challenging for the title. Just if they can stay fit is the key for that one. So any points for that?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to help the audience differentiate between the attackers that are not Salah, because I think where we see value is the left side. The thing about Liverpool last season is that at times they operated as a front 3, no question about it. And then they tried to shoehorn Darwin Núñez as a front 2 alongside Salah. That was when he got like 2 goals against Crystal Palace or something like that. When Núñez got that early red card early in the season, right, for violent conduct or something like that, they had to switch. They went back to a conventional 4-3-3. And that was when they tried to experiment with Fabio Carvalho, I think, on the left wing, because Luis Diaz was still injured. Like, he played really well in the 9-0, and then after that, he just faded completely. Then we have Diogo Jota. We really need to preach the idea of role fluidity, because when you choose a Liverpool attacker, sure, you know, you play the conventional game, you buy Salah, and it's like what penalties and wing and shooting and, you know, dribbling in the box and goal assist, whatever. And then you've got everyone else. Luis Diaz does pretty much the exact same thing. He just has a worse injury record. The only difference is that Luis Diaz can actually play in the number 10 if Liverpool squeeze the centre. But if they want to play wide and hit teams with pace, then Diogo Jota is going to be your main man. Diogo Jota as the number 9 is so valuable because he helps harry centre-backs and midfielders, and he doesn't allow teams to rest. That basically puts Liverpool on the whole heavy metal. I cannot foresee Liverpool trying multiple attacking strategies at once. He has to go with one. And I feel that as FPL players looking from the outside in, we have to back the role that we want to see. I'm sure there are plenty of players out there who want to pick players for points. Sure, you take your points. Take your points and go. But in terms of picking a player that you want to back every week, if you want to know when to leave, right? If you want to know when to get out there and sell Diogo Jota, then you know at least that, injury withstanding, if Diogo Jota is not making runs that stretches back lines, you know, getting offsides, 3 to 4 offsides and then scoring a goal. If you see Luis Diaz not dribbling and letting Darwin Núñez dribble from the left side instead, oh my gosh, okay, sell Luis Diaz straight away. If you're looking at Gakpo as a false 9, sell him. Gakpo's way better as a number 10 when he plays in the fullbacks and all that. I think it's important to identify the role, the set role of each player in preseason, no matter where they play, including McAllister and Soboslai, so that we can eventually foresee how the pieces fit together when they actually start the season. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. So I think the key thing is people will think this is the same Liverpool. Go for Trent, go for Van Dijk, go for Robbo, go for Salah. But a key point we're trying to get across to the audience is we really need to look at the roles. Don't just look at your app or Google and it says, oh, they're playing a 4-2-3-1, because they won't just play a 4-2-3-1. You're gonna have to look at heat maps. You're gonna have to watch the games to really figure out what roles.
Substitutions especially.
Because that can also change the roles, right? If Darwin Núñez comes on for Gakpo, that means probably Salah could either be up front with Núñez or pushed out to the wing to get the ball into Núñez, right? We're trying to tell people that this is going to be a different Liverpool side. You're going to have to look at substitutions, look at how they start out, look at heat maps, look at average positioning of each player and figure out the roles that they're going to do to then understand, is this the player who's going to bring me value in terms of FPL? And just for the final point, and a key point you said just about how bad they are with injuries. So a player that has played every minute of the Premier League is 3,420 minutes. That's the entire Premier League season. So you've got Mo Salah with 3,290. Excellent. He's started 37 of 38 games. He's your talisman. He's your main man. He's 12.5 million. Van Dijk 2,835, Trent 2,922, Robertson 2,579. Not bad. Robertson's the lowest one there. He had 29 starts out of 38. All the other players to go in with this side, it's 1,500 minutes for Konate. It's 1,400 minutes for Gomez. It's 1,000 minutes for Matip. It's Fabinho 2,666, but you're not going to get him for FPL. He's the defensive midfielder. You've got Henderson 2,000, but you're probably not going to look at that. But that's still not a lot. That is still only 23 starts out of 38.
Go through the attackers. So
Thiago, injury prone, 1,252 minutes. Elliott, 1,600. Diogo Jota, 1,125 minutes. That's 12 starts in the Premier League. Jones, just over 1,000. Diaz, just under 1,000. Darwin, 1,600, almost 1,700. Gakpo, but Gakpo came in January, right?
Probably, after the World Cup, yeah.
And he was 1,455, so 17 starts. So Gakpo was actually, in terms of ratio for how long he was at the club and how many games he started, is 2 under. He didn't start two of those games, right? The key point here is keep your eye on formations and roles and changes even after subs happen, because this is not the same tried and true Liverpool side where you can pick this player and I know what he's going to do this game, and really look into just how injury prone this side were last season and to see if they've gotten over it or not. We don't need to tell people Salah is a good pick and Trent's going to be an interesting one, but that could affect Robertson, because if they end up going 3 at the back, that means Robertson's not bombing up and down that wing and he's more playing at left centre back. Keep really, if you want to dive into this, and we'll do this when we're looking at preseason Liverpool, to have a look at the formation and the shapes and the roles that these guys have before and after substitutions. This could be a very interesting season in terms of FPL for Liverpool, because this side might not be the Liverpool side that you are used to in terms of FPL. But equally, it could improve. It's such an unknown quantity right now to see what these new players and this new style is going to do. But that's going to be it for the Liverpool video. Thanks for joining me again, Lucian. And we'll be back next time with newly promoted Luton Town. We're going maybe from the top of the table to the bottom of the table. We'll have a look at that in our team guide. But thanks for joining us today. And as always, have a good one.